Welcome back. The Highline announced three local recipients of a $25,000 grant in an effort to address the migrant crisis in New York City. These recipients were selected through its Neighbors Council, a community body that collaborates with nonprofits. PS 11, Quest to Learn, and UnLocal are the three recipients of the grant. Senior Director for Community Government Relations at the Highline, Preeti Sodhi, and Director of Community Programs Engagement at UnLocal, Eva Mayhabal Davis, joins me to discuss the mission. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So, I'd just like to know, first, what inspired the Highline to create a grant aimed at supporting new migrants in New York?
Well, the Highline is a park on the west side of Manhattan, but we're also much more than that. We're a nonprofit organization in a community space. Given that we're constantly thinking about how can we be a good neighbor. One of the ways we do this is to ensure that our community has a seat at the table, and we do that through our Community Advisory Council, the Neighbors Council. It's an intergenerational group. We have teenagers. Our oldest member is 88. And it's one way where we tap into listening to what is happening on to our community on the ground. We collaborate with our Neighbors Council to get input. We help to shape programs. And one of these programs is the Neighbor to Neighbor Fund, which just completed its third year. In conversations with our Neighbors Council last year, we talked about issues impacting our community. And one of the issues that kept coming up was the fact that we had many newly arrived migrant families to our community, and then there was an impact on the community-based organizations on the ground that were working to support them.
Now, as I mentioned, three different recipients were awarded a total of $25,000, which is pretty amazing. What were some of the qualities Highline looked for when awarding the grants?
So some of the qualities that the Highline looked for when awarding these grants were who are the organizations that have deep roots in our community, that have trust-based relationships, and where could the funding make the biggest impact? One of the priorities that has come up time and time again for our Neighbors Council is supporting children and young people, so that was another thing that we were looking at. Some of the grantees had pre-existing relationships with, like the schools. Some are new, like UnLocal. An added bonus that came through all of this was that each organization expressed a real desire to get to know each other and work together. And so for us, that felt that really could, maximize and amplify the impact of the grant.
Now, Ava, I want to say congratulations first because your organization, UnLocal, is among those who received the grant. Can you just tell me a little bit more about your organization?
Absolutely. UnLocal is a community-centered organization that works to provide legal representation as well as community education for New York's undocumented community.
Now, I also want to mention that a lot of the work that your organization has been doing has been for years, since 2008. How has the work the organization does evolved since 2008 till now, especially as, New York City is experiencing a migrant crisis?
It has evolved and grown so much. From the very beginning of it being a very personal mission from our founder to it being embedded into the communities. And now we're based in Manhattan as a center point where we can have immigrant families reach us from all boroughs. And at the moment, really responding and listening to what our community needs.
Now, I would also appreciate if you could just give us a little bit of background about the migrant crisis in New York City. I know that for a lot of New Yorkers, people just may hear things in passing, or like maybe they'll see a clip on the news, and sometimes the stories could be swayed either way. But I think it's really important that now that we have somebody who's been doing the work, if you can give us just a background of what's actually going on.
Sure. I think it's important for us to remember the background of what New York City is, and that what this country is too, that it is part of an immigrant community, that we are that community. And it isn't so much around a crisis, but it is very much about what our role has been with every new wave of migrants into the country and into the city. Where have we stepped up to be a new neighbor? Where have we stepped up to support our communities? And also, what are the ways in which we want to present ourselves as a welcoming community, as a sanctuary city, and also what it means to think about the wealth in this city and its distribution. for our new neighbors, for ourselves, and prompting up generation after generation of immigrants.
Now, Preeti, New York City has seen, as we mentioned, a significant influx of immigrants in recent years. Why was it important for the High Line to address this? I know that sometimes we see organizations and people think that they just do their thing in their own little corner. But I think it's very interesting that your organization decided to step up. So can you explain why that was important?
Sure. So first of all, the High Line, it's a park for all New Yorkers. All are welcome. And we really want all of our visitors to feel a sense of belonging. As you talked about, our city has welcomed thousands of newcomers, and in our own backyard, we have many families who are staying in temporary housing and shelters and enrolling in public schools in our community, such as PS11 and Quest to Learn, and needing assistance from community organizations like UnLocal.
Now, before we talk about the other organizations, because would love to, learn a little bit more about them. Can you both just explain, so far leading up to this point, what has this just, your natural feeling, what has this been, this experience been like for the both of you, just being a part of this?
Well, at the moment, I think it's really listening to the community. It means of understanding what we've been missing, and I think this also goes back to the way that New York City has dealt with anything it faces. At one point, it was COVID, and in the before times, all of these different crises per se. And here we are again, trying to find a creative solution, trying to find a collaborative solution with partners. So it's really an honor to be able to consider what a public space is and really own it and be part of a grantee with the High Line.
I think it just gets back to, being a good neighbor and, listening to your community. I think, one of the things I mentioned, one of the most inspiring parts of all of this is connecting these three organizations together, Quest to Learn, PS11 Aid Foundation, and UnLocal. There's been so much, first they were so appreciative and they're doing such important work in our community, but also there's such excitement about connecting with each other. So that was really special that we were able to support them, but also connect them with each other, and hopefully, that has impact on their work down the road.
Now, I also want to take a moment to highlight PS11 and Quest to Learn. Although they're not here, I can imagine they're probably just as amazing as UnLocal. Can you tell us a little bit more about those organizations and why they were selected?
Sure. So Quest to Learn and PS11 are trusted organizations and places of learning in our community. At PS11, this was actually, the Aid Foundation came out of a group of families that were mobilized during the pandemic. And when these newly arrived migrant families came to our community and started enrolling in the school, they reinvigorated the network to come together to support them. Everything from providing basic needs to having a free store to provide so that migrant families could access what they needed. At Quest to Learn, for example, they really amplified their language services to accommodate students and further developed other programs and initiatives to serve them, as well as making sure they had access to their basic necessities. These schools, they embraced their students, they were responsive, they embraced their families, and it was really important for us to support them. We've had long-standing relationships with both. With UnLocal, they're an organization that we are newly connected with, and we're looking to further develop that relationship.
All right, thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of background on that. Now, Eva, how about the grant money further support your organization's effort to support immigrants in New York? And you don't have to give all the specific details, but what are some plans that you have now that you've won this grant?
Absolutely. We actually have a lot of programming that we've established with UnLocal. Programming especially geared towards our youth, our undocumented youth, as well as really programs for the summer that bring community together and in those expressions of joy. And also in order to support the ongoing staff and essential workers that continue to do this work. And what we have planned for the summer is a continued collaboration with our partners. We have an open community closet where we're always looking for donations and have wish lists for the essential items that we know our clients need. And of course, we have a resource fair coming up and really providing resources of connecting to other social services and our partners and collaborators.
And I also want to take a moment. I know that I mentioned that it began in 2008. I'm curious to know, how did your organization kind of push through, still going strong even after the pandemic?
I think it really comes down to working with individuals that are part of the community, that we see and understand what the needs are. And I think it also comes out of a place of care, of a lot of care. And really also thinking through what are creative ways to find solutions to being able to live and find sustainability.
Now, Preeti, can you just explain, how do you hope your organization will continue to assist New Yorkers in need? I think this was an amazing initiative. What are some plans for the future?
Well, first and foremost, the Highline, it's a place of belonging. We hope that people come, they hang out with their friends and family, they get respite, they experience our horticulture, our public art program. We have free public programs all throughout the year, cultural programs. We also have our teen employment program, our volunteer program. So it's really coming to visit, taking advantage of everything we have to offer, but also knowing that, we're going to continue actively listening to our neighbors and our community members. We want to know what's happening in our community. We want to know how we can support them. That's something that we're going to continue to do.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us and just giving us a little bit of background about both of the communities that you guys helped create. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To stay up to date with the community at the Highline, visit thehighline.org. And to learn more about the UnLocal and the resources they provide, visit their website at unlocal.org. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.